And I go, this is better.
Well, it's 7 o'clock just after, and we're gonna go ahead and kind of record the session here a bit. And Scott's gonna be leading the session tonight. But before he does, are there any thoughts or questions by anybody here in the group? If you're new, we'd love to hear how you found out about the classes and perhaps what you might hope to gain from them. You know the price is right. It hasn't cost you anything to log on and be in the room with us. Several of the members that are with us tonight have been to multiple classes, and it looks like there's a few new names here. So feel free to unmute or raise your hand, and we'll find out who sent you, how you found out about this. I see Candace first.
I'm Candace Cardiff. I found out about it from the YMCA newsletter originally that talked about this class in the in-person classes, and I had originally planned to go to in-person, but I live out in Harrisburg, so it was a trip in. So I decided to try this class, and I did have a meeting with Charles on last Friday, and I've lost 3 pounds already, Charles, since Friday.
Wow. Well,
So,
congratulations to you.
And thanks. I ended up having my regular units of insulin before each meal. And on Sunday, my lunch when I went into a severe low and had to chase it for about an hour to get it back to normal. And so I've cut out the morning insulin and reduced the lunch one to just a couple units. And the night when I did my usual, and I stayed pretty normal. So we'll see how it goes, but it's working really fast.
Yeah, did I warn you that it could happen pretty quickly?
You did. Yeah.
So it's good you're keeping track. It's totally amazing. And a lot of people find that pretty incredible, but congratulations to you. Welcome to the class, and just listen in on the sessions. And if you have questions, we will help support you as best as we can.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else? Care to say hello and find out about the class, Susan?
I was just wondering, do you have to be a member of the Y to go to those lectures?
No.
You know,
the lectures are, you don't have to, the YMCA has a room that's a community room for those people who are not members.
Oh, good. Thank you. Ah, great.
So you walk past the front desk and you look to the left, you see the pools before you go outside the building. And then you look to the right, and that's where the classroom is. Corner of 24th and Hilliard. Anybody else want to say hello or new to the class, or and how you found out about it? I'm going to scan over to this next page of people to see if there is anybody.
I don't see too many other new names, at least.
Okay.
Nothing that jumps out.
All righty. Well, Scott, it's your ball game.
All right, we'll get started. So is my volume okay?
It's just fine.
So let me share screen and do share sound, optimize for video clip. Share. So you can see my computer screen, I take it?
Yep, it looks great.
Okay. So first I'm going to show some things on the class website that pertain to tonight's class. And so if you're new to the classes or new to the website, it's just livelifestylemedicine.com. This is the website. And if you haven't subscribed to the weekly class newsletter, you can do so right here at this tab, subscribe, and you get a welcome newsletter, and then you get a newsletter every Sunday morning going forward. And I put a little warning here because sometimes it'll go to your junk file. So if you don't receive the welcome newsletter right away or the Sunday morning weekly newsletter, check your junk file because sometimes it goes there. And if you're new to the website, you can also scroll down here to the website tutorial, click on it. It's about a 20-minute video of me giving a tour of all the ins and outs of the website. So check that out. So for tonight's class, I want to show you a few things before I actually get started with my PowerPoint. Tonight's class is it's part 1 of 2 on weight management. I'm going to really focus on calorie density. And then at a later time, I think in a few weeks, there's a second part to this lecture, which is related to food addiction and behavior change. And so that I used to do kind of a more rudimentary coverage of that particular topic, but I've since studied up on it more and learned a lot more. And I do a full class on that in particular. So that'll be part 2 of my lecture, but Charlie will do part 2 of weight management next week. So the first thing I want to show you guys is on the videos section. So if you click on videos right here and you scroll down, you'll see a calorie density lecture by dietitian Jeff Novick right here. So this is a full 1 hour and 19-minute lecture on calorie density, and it's really, really good. I highly recommend it. I probably watched it 8 or 9 times before I did pick up something that was new, because there's so much detail in it. And so I'm going to be showing a couple of short clips from this lecture in tonight's presentation, but I do strongly encourage anybody that's trying to lose weight to not only watch tonight's lecture as well as the recording of tonight's lecture, however many times you feel like you need to, because there's a lot of detail. But I highly recommend, I always tell my patients at work, if you're trying to lose weight, I tell patients at least every 3 months, watch this particular lecture by Jeff Novick until you reach your goal weight, because again, there's so much detail in it. It's so valuable. So there's that. Next thing I want to show you is under the resources tab. So click resources, and I'm going to go to the books section and scroll down to the weight management and food addiction class. So these are, again, like I mentioned, these are two different classes now. So some of these books are for the food addiction class. The one specific to tonight is How Not to Diet by Dr. Greger, and that's listed here, and you can buy it on Amazon if you don't have it yet. And also he has if you have his app that we always talk about in these classes, the Daily Dozen app, there's also a 21 tweaks for weight loss section on the Daily Dozen app. And so it's essentially the cliff notes of this entire book here. What's the 21 tweaks for weight loss, evidence-based weight loss strategies that you learn in reading this book. And so you can either read the book, which I encourage, but if you just want to kind of the cliff notes, you can go to the 21 tweaks on the Daily Dozen app and kind of get the benefits of all the different weight loss tips and from the studies and the peer-reviewed literature. So there's that. Next, we're going to go to handouts from classes. So I'll go back to resources and click on handouts from classes, and then scroll down. So we have the calorie density graph. So that's the first thing. And I'm going to be going over this in detail tonight, just so you know that you'll see it on the PowerPoint presentation, but you have access to it here. You can click on it here, download PDF, and you can print it and have your own copy, or you can just look at it electronically. And then there's also what 500 calories in the stomach look like. It's a nice little infographic here. And you've heard Charlie talk about this, when he shows that slide where 500 calories of plant food versus 500 calories of animal food, how much space does it take up, and all the different, how much protein and all the nutrients and the differences in the nutrient profile of the 500 calories. So this is what a good depiction of what 500 calories looks like in your stomach. Fruits and veggies completely fills it up, or oil, it's just a tiny bit there, cheese a little bit there, meat a little bit more. Then potatoes, rice, and beans, it's almost completely full. So what we're teaching you to eat in these classes is basically fruits, vegetables, potatoes, rice, beans, whole grains. So you're really just right here. So on 500 calories, you get to fill up your stomach. So there's that. And then the last thing I want to show you on the website, another handout is this actual article written by Jeff Novick, the dietitian I was telling you about, through Forks Over Knives. So it's a several page article that you can read and has lists of calorie density of different foods and stuff. So, so you have access to that as well. Those are the things I wanted to show you on the website. Any questions about that before I move to my PowerPoint? Let's see here. Let's minimize this. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up my PowerPoint here.
I don't see any hands up.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So weight management, and then again, food addiction will be a second part. So we're just going to be talking about weight management tonight and calorie density. A couple of quotes to start with here. If we don't change the direction in which we are going, we will end up where we are headed. Like that one. And you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. So, little words of inspiration there. And then this, I think, is really important. So in these classes, there's two different mentalities. You know, it's the early part of the year. You see all the weight loss commercials and products and things. And so there's kind of two different mentalities. We have the diet mentality and the health mentality. And so the diet mentality focuses on food as the enemy, my own bad habits, things I'm doing temporarily, things I don't like about myself, the scale, and a finish line. So those are kind of, if you think about it, when we go on diets and New Year's resolutions and things like that, it's the epitome of those things. Those are the things that they tend to equate to. Whereas the health mentality focuses on food as fuel, my good habits, so focusing on the positive, things I'm doing forever. This is a lifestyle change. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. There's no finish line. It's not a temporary thing. Things that I want for myself instead of things you don't like about yourself. It's what do you want? What's your why? What are the things you want for yourself in your life? And that's the daily choices we make. And this is a lifelong journey. So hopefully I get you in the health mentality, and Charlie as well, in these classes instead of the diet mentality. So I'm going to start off by talking about how our appetite works. And then we'll talk a little bit about what role of behavior change and emotions are there. And we did already talk about the How Not to Diet book with Dr. Greger and the 21 tweaks that's included on the Daily Dozen app. But before I go to the behavior change and emotional, let's go back to essentially let's go ahead and talk about this, and then I can focus on the appetite. So I kind of want to acknowledge that even though I'm going to do a whole class on behavior change and food addiction, you know, it's not, when I talk about appetite tonight, it's really just the physiological aspect of appetite. So how our human biology deals with appetite. And whereas there's more things that go into being satisfied than just our own biology, our own appetite. So you think about it, you know, there's things that, you know, I'll talk a lot tonight about the words satiety or satiation. It's what that means is feeling kind of full and satisfied, not just having a full stomach, but you feel, you know, satisfied. I mean, this is the best way to look at it. And there's other things that go into that. So, you know, if you're an emotional eater, people have those issues. But how our emotions are, behavior change and food addiction play a big role in whether or not we feel satisfied after we eat. And so sometimes we eat when we're happy, when we're sad, when we're stressed. So all those things play into whether or not we're satisfied. So I just want to acknowledge that even in this class, even though I'm going to do a whole class dedicated to that a little bit later. So I just want to acknowledge that before I talk about the kind of the science of appetite and how that works. Okay. All right, so appetite. So what we have two basic mechanisms of how we feel full and satisfied. So the first mechanism we have is called stretch receptors or baroreceptors. So on the outside of our stomach, we have little receptors that when we feel our stomach full of food or whatever goes into the stomach gets full, stretches it, and then those little pressure sensors, those baroreceptors, send chemical signals to our brain telling us we're full. different hormones like CCK and ghrelin and what's the other one? Just drew a blank on the other one. So ghrelin and I'll come to it in a minute, but they actually send those signals to our brain. Leptin's the other one. So ghrelin kind of makes us feel hungry, and leptin makes us feel full. So you've maybe heard of those. So those are the chemical signals that go to the brain when our stomach is stretched and makes us feel full. But if you think about it for a minute, just that one mechanism alone wouldn't be enough, because what if you filled your stomach full of water? So water has a lot of weight, takes up space, and it would stretch your stomach out if you just drank a ton of water, but there's no calories in water. So if that was the only mechanism we had going back, hundreds of thousands of years, we would starve because we would feel full, not have any desire to eat, but we didn't get any calories. So we have a second mechanism to account for that. And the second mechanism has many names. They're called calorie density receptors, richness receptors. And so it's kind of basically, it senses what the number of calories are in the stomach, if it's really dilute or if it's really rich. And so you'll feel that, and your body knows the difference between one or the other. And a really good example I always like to give in this, and I'm assuming you guys can see me okay with my hands up in front of me. And if not, let me know. And
we can see you.
Great thing. I can't see myself with my PowerPoint up, so I just want to make sure you guys can see my hands. Okay, so let's everyone in class take each fist and hold it up in front of you. So you have a fist size of food in each of your hands. And so let's say in your right hand is kale, and in your left hand is cheesecake. Okay, so they're the same mass or same volume of food. So each of these fist sizes of food is going to take up the same amount of space in your stomach, and they're going to stretch the stomach the same with that one mechanism with the stretch receptors. But which one's going to make you feel fuller when you're done with it? The fist size of kale or the fist size of cheesecake? What's your guess?
Left.
Right, correct. The left, the cheesecake, right? Because we all know that, right? We would eat the cheesecake and we go, oof, that's really rich. I'm full, right? And so that's the exact mechanism of the richness receptor in effect. And so our body knows that that was a huge load of calories in that fist size of cheesecake as compared to the fist size of kale. So that's just a really good depiction of kind of how our appetite works and what makes us feel full. So I want you to kind of think about that going forward, and also kind of another thing to keep in mind when we think about our appetite. They've done lots of feeding studies. Most of the really good feeding studies that a lot of the information I'm presenting tonight on calorie density is from a nutritional scientist named Barbara Rolls. And Barbara Rolls did a lot of her research at Penn State University, and they have tons of feeding experiments where they fed people different calorie densities of foods and monitored people for how full and satisfied they felt and things. And we'll get to calorie density in a second, but I wanted to mention that humans eat about 3 to 5 pounds of food every day, and everyone's a little bit different, but people from day to day, each individual person eats about the same amount of food in a day. And so when I give some examples in a little bit, we're going to kind of think about 3 pounds of food, about a pound of food per meal, because most people, that's about enough food volume to feel full, about a pound or so. And so we're kind of keep those things in mind as we go forward. So hopefully that visual is helpful. So we're going to talk about calorie density. So what is calorie density? So calorie density is purely the number of calories in a given weight of food. So very, very simple. And so in science, when they do studies, they do calories per gram because it's a little more accurate. There's about 454 grams in a pound, but a lot of us are not that familiar with grams, like what's 100 grams or 20 grams or 50 grams or 200 grams. We don't really visualize what that looks like. So we actually teach it to the general public, calorie density and calories per pound, because we kind of all know what a pound is, but just kind of acknowledge that calories per gram is kind of, in research, that's what they utilized, because it's a little more precise. So here's the calorie density graph, and we're going to go over this in great detail. And again, you saw where it's at on the website, so you have a copy if you'd like it. And so there's kind of essentially three colors here. The yellows kind of came out almost orangey, but so we have green, and we have some yellow, and we have red. And this is not exactly the same as the traffic lights, green, yellow, and red, but I'm just going to explain each of these and the various reasons that each of these are different colors and stuff. You'll see a green arrow coming down here to about 500 calories per pound. And so the first time I looked at this chart, you'll see things here like, okay, vegetables are about 100 calories a pound, and then oil is 4,000 calories a pound. So the least calorie dense food on the planet are vegetables. Some vegetables are under 100 calories a pound, like kale's about 70 calories per pound. And then oil, no matter whether it's canola oil or olive oil or coconut oil or motor oil, every oil is 4,000 calories per pound. It's 9 calories per gram and 4,000 calories per pound. And so essentially, if you lined up every food at the grocery store from end to end, everything would fall between just under 100 calories a pound to 4,000 calories a pound if you're looking at the oil on the shelves. Or like yum sauce, for example, that's like 85% fat. And so it's pretty much just oil. And so you see the huge difference. But the first time I looked at this chart, and we're going to go over all these different food categories, I kind of went, well, who cares? Because I'm never going to eat 4,000 or a pound of oil. I'm never eating a pound of butter, which is 3,200 calories in a pound. I'm never going to eat a pound of nuts at 2,800 calories. I'm never going to eat a pound of potato chips at 2,300 calories. So who cares? It's like something that's a fair question. But what's so great about it, what's so amazing about it, is calorie density is a constant. So like in math equations, you have a constant, and it's so important in math equations to have a constant. So the calorie density will never change no matter how much of it you eat. So whether you eat a handful of it or a pound of it, the calorie density will always be the same. And why that's so important is because when people are trying to lose weight, they're counting calories, it's never very accurate. Even a really seasoned dietitian is not very accurate at estimating their own or one of their clients' number of calories in a day, because you have to know exactly the weight and how much it is and all the ingredients and what's the calories of each of the ingredients. And estimating how much you're eating is very difficult. And so when we're trying to portion control and count calories, it's very frustrating, as a lot of you I'm sure can attest to. And so if you can throw that out the window, I don't have to worry about how many calories I'm eating. I don't have to worry about my portions or weighing my food or any of that nonsense. I just need to know what's the calorie density of the foods that I'm choosing. And then I can know, is that a food I can just eat as much as I want, or is that a food I should avoid, or maybe just have a tiny, tiny bit of? And so that's where it's really going to be powerful for you guys. If you understand this concept of calorie density, it's really amazing. So I'm going to go through some of these things here, and then I'm going to show you some videos from Jeff Novick, the dietitian, and he's going to show you like 2 different foods that show you the number of calories in the food that's in the picture. And then he's going to ask you which one's going to fill you up more. And you'll kind of get the visual of this concept, okay? So I'm going to run through here. So we already talked about vegetables at 100 calories a pound. Fruits about 300 calories a pound. Potatoes or tubers, so your tubers, your potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, about 400 calories a pound. Whole grains, which is be like your brown rice, your oats, your quinoa, bulgur, amaranth, farro. So intact whole grains, not processed grains, but intact whole grains, are about 500 calories a pound. Tofu, which is yellow because it's just minimally processed, is 500 calories a pound also. Legumes, which are your beans, peas, chickpeas, split peas, and lentils, they're about 600 calories a pound. And pasta is about 600 calories a pound, which might surprise you. As we get further down, I'll come back to pasta. And that's why it's in the green. Avocados are about 700 calories a pound, they're yellow because they're pretty high in fat. That's why they kind of get the yellow light. And then poultry, eggs, and fish are about 700 calories a pound. We have those red light, not because they're high in calorie density necessarily, but because they don't have fiber, they're relatively low in nutrients per calorie. They have saturated fat and they have cholesterol, they have other pollutants and things. So it gets a red light here, even though it's not that high in calorie density. And I'm going to also make a comment here. This is a good time for this, is these foods are not that high in calorie density because they're not processed, right? Poultry, eggs, and fish are not processed. Beef is a little higher at 1,000 calories a pound. A steak you might get at a restaurant's closer to about 1,200 calories a pound. So it's getting a little high. And we're going to go over some examples to give you some context here. But kind of think about this. If you went back in a time machine about 100, 150 years, there wasn't really hardly ever any overweight people. And a lot of that reason is because there wasn't, the processed foods weren't created yet. And so, these foods, even though, people weren't eating a large portion of these foods because they're relatively expensive, but they're not super high in calorie density. So people tended to not be overweight because mostly people were eating down here on this end was what most people were eating for the vast majority of their calories. And this green light, again, I'll come back to it, but 500 calories a pound is kind of where the studies that they did, I was referring to earlier, that showed that people was kind of the sweet spot. So if you were eating 500 calories a pound average for your day, that's where most people were losing weight and attaining their ideal weight. So we'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to continue to go through some of these numbers here. And you don't have to memorize these. You just kind of, as you go through, you'll see, it's not every single food on here. It's just kind of categories of foods. Now we're down to tortillas. So we're about 1,000 calories a pound, which is why it's yellow. Ice cream is about 1,000 calories a pound. Of course, it gets a red light because it's just sugar and fat. There's at least the tortilla's got some fiber in it and some whole grain in it. Bread is 1,200 calories a pound, and this kind of comes back to, you might be surprised. So because people think of pasta and bread kind of the same, right? And so what do you think is the difference between, so why is pasta only 600 calories a pound, but bread is 1,200 calories a pound? Does anybody have a guess as to why bread is twice the calorie density as pasta? You want to take a stab at that? What'd you say, Trouty?
Moisture? It's got oil in it.
Not the oil, but I heard somebody say moisture, and that's exactly correct. So the pasta absorbs water, right? You boil it. And so once you boil pasta, it's soaked up a bunch of water. So that water lowered the calorie density. Whereas bread, it's just flour, water, and yeast, and a pinch of salt. So basically you took the whole grain, which is the wheat berry, which was only 500 calories a pound. Once you grind it into a flour, and then just add some water, then you bake it in the oven. Now it's 1,200 calories a pound because it's been processed somewhat. So that's why the calorie density is so much different. And then the moisture issue, here's another perfect example. Dried fruit is 1,200 calories a pound, but fresh fruit is only 300 calories a pound, right? Because the fruit here is full of water. And so the dried fruit's just as healthy as the fresh fruit, especially if they don't add any sugar or anything to it. Like if you dried your own apples or something like that, to think about it, you could easily sit and eat 5 apples worth of dried apples if you dehydrated them yourself. But could you sit and eat 5 apples? I don't think so. You'd be like, ugh, no. Right? It'd take up so much space. And that's the water issue. And then we're at cheese, 1,700 calories a pound. Pure sugar is 1,700 calories a pound. And it's really kind of should be red, but the reason it's yellow is because Jeff Novick was making a point in some of his other lectures, I got this actually from Jeff Novick, that sugar is kind of used not as a food, but as a condiment. Like, if you just put a pinch of sugar in your coffee, or maybe a pinch of sugar on your oatmeal. Yeah, it's a lot. 1,700 calories in a pound is a lot, but there's no nutrient value. It's just empty calories, and so that's why he has it as a yellow light food here. Whereas cheese, even though it's the same amount of calorie density, cheese is full of saturated fat and salt and cholesterol, and it's also a processed food just like sugar. So not that you choose sugar as a food, but it would be a sprinkle of it on something would be a lot different than consuming cheese, for example. And then cookies are about 2,000 calories a pound. Chips, 2,300 calories a pound. We kind of already went over nuts and seeds at 2,800 calories a pound, which is why Gregor says, hey, let's just keep nuts and seeds to a handful a day, because it's a lot of calories, a lot of fat and a lot of calories, but it is healthy, but just a lot of fat and calories. And then I want to give one more example here to kind of drive this home. So you took a wheat berry, again, like we talked about before, grind it into flour. So now you have bread at 1,200 calories a pound. So now what happens when you add some sugar, you add some butter, and you add some oil, now you have a cookie, 2,000 calories a pound. So something that was once a whole grain at 500 calories a pound, all the stuff you add to it, all the stuff down on the right-hand side of the chart, just keeps driving the calorie density up. The more you process it, the more you strip the fiber out, the more you take out the water, the fiber, the more processed it becomes, the calorie density goes up. So, all right. Before I give a couple of examples and then go to the videos, does anybody have any questions about this chart so far? Okay.
No
Well, I'm gonna-
questions in the chat.
All right.
So why is butter less than oil?
Because it's still got some water in it, and so it's
see.
basically it's mostly all saturated fat, and whereas some of the oils have, even though fat is fat, 9 calories per gram, 4,000 calories a pound, there's more to butter than just, it's not quite 100% fat. There's some other solids and things in it. Yeah.
Got you.
All right. So what I want to do is, are you guys familiar with some of those weight loss shows like My 600-Pound Life or Biggest Loser, things like that? If you are, you know, they tend to put people on, like Dr. Nowzaradan, who's on the 600-Pound Life. He tends to put his patients on like a low carb diet, and it's usually 1,200 calorie a day diet is what he typically does. A lot of weight loss surgeons do that. And so I want to kind of give an example, 2 different examples of how calorie density makes a big difference here. And so if you were eating 1,200 calories a pound, I just want to kind of let people know that the typical standard American diet is equates to about 1,500 calories per pound is about what it averages out as. So if you're eating, you know, meat, cheese, processed foods, some fruits and vegetables, that ends up overall being about 1,500 calories a pound overall when they do feeding experiments. That's what tends to be about what it is. And when you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you can see most of the foods we're teaching in this class are all the way down here. And a whole food plant-based diet is right about 500 calories a pound. Actually, if you're eating even really keeping the breads and tortillas and things like that low, eating like Charlie, where he's eating lots of beans and steamed greens, and even better than I am even, he's probably eating more around 400 calories a pound is my guess, Dr. Ross is. And so I just want to give you 2 different examples. A really clean whole food plant-based diet's about 400 calories a pound. The standard American diet's about 1,500 calories a pound. So I want to give you a couple of examples here. So let's just say you're in the Biggest Loser and you're going to eat either a low carb diet, or you're going to eat or just let's just say you're on a diet and you're just going to count calories and cut calories eating the standard American diet, and you're going to only eat 1,200 calories a day. Okay, so going back to what we were talking about with the appetite, when they do feeding experiments, people eat between 3 and 5 pounds of food per day to feel full and satisfied. So when they do these medical ward studies where they basically take patients and they lock them up in a 5-star hotel and control every single thing they eat, so they're actually locked in, and the people volunteer for these studies. And so they let them eat what's called ad libitum, which means to your as much as you want. Basically, it's Latin for eat as much as you want. And so they don't restrict portions. They let them eat till they're comfortably full. They don't want them to stuff themselves. They don't want them to go hungry. And so they monitor they actually feed them different amounts of calorie density and let them eat as much as they want, and they see what happens. And so keeping in mind that people tend to eat about 3 to 5 pounds of food a day. So if you're a larger male with lots of muscle and you're very active, maybe you eat closer to 5 pounds. Or let's say you're a smaller, more elderly female and you maybe only eat 3 pounds of food in a day. You know, you maybe do some walking or something, and that's kind of more typical. And so let's just go with the 3 pound person, just because it makes the math easy when I give these examples. So let's say you're eating one pound of food 3 meals a day, and you feel full and satisfied with that 1 pound of food 3 squares a day. And let's just say that's you, and that's actually the person also is going to try to do that. That's trying to only eat 1,200 calories. Okay, so let's say I'm only going to eat 1,200 calories. but I got to eat 3 pounds of food to feel full and satisfied. Well, how easy is it going to be to eat 1,200 calories if, say, you're eating the standard American diet, which is 1,500 calories a pound, we just talked about, right? So if you're eating 3 pounds of food and eating 1,500 calories per pound, that's 4,500 calories, right? Because 1,500 times 3 is 4,500. So no wonder most Americans are overweight, because they want to feel full and satisfied. They want to get at least that 3 pounds of food, and maybe even up to 5 pounds of food, in order to feel full and satisfied. And that's how many calories that would be. And so if you're going to cut your calories to 1,200 calories in the whole day, what's going to happen? Okay, so let's do the math there. So if you're eating 1,500 calories a pound, but you're only going to eat 1,200 calories in a day, how much food are you going to get to eat in that day? Less than a pound, right? Do you see that? So if 1,500 calories a pound is what you're eating, but you're only going to eat 1,200 calories, you're not even going to get a whole pound of food. And so that's not going to make your stretch receptors very happy. Yeah, your density receptors might be okay, but your stretch receptors are not going to be happy, and you saw that picture of what 500 calories looks like of different foods in the stomach. And so your stomach's never going to be full. You're going to be hungry all the time. And that's miserable, right? And that's why diets tend to fail. And so, but let's say you're eating like Charlie and you're eating 400 calories a pound. You're eating really good fruits, vegetables, beans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, intact whole grains, and maybe, that handful of nuts and seeds are here. And so you're at 400 calories a pound is your average calorie density for your day. So how much food, if you're eating only 1,200 calories, how many pounds of food do you get to eat? How many times does 400 go into 1,200? 3, right? So you get to have 400 calories a pound times 3 pounds of food, 1,200 calories. So you get to eat 1,200 calories, but have 3 pounds of food. So you're full and satisfied, whereas the person eating the same number of calories at 1,200 calories only gets less than a pound of food. So you see how important calorie density is? Is that making sense to you guys? So any questions before I move to the Jeff Novick videos? He's going to actually show you 2 different foods, and he's going to ask you which is going to make you feel more full, the one on the right or the one on the left is kind of where he's going to go. But I just wanted, before I showed that, I wanted to see if there were any questions about the chart and the examples I gave there.
I have one.
Sure.
I think we are missing the drinks, like soda pop and juices and such, because quite a few people say, okay, I'm going to skip the meal, but just have soda or something like that.
So most of the weight of soda is water, but then it's just all sugar. So, so you're probably getting, close, maybe a little bit less than 1,700 calories. You have to figure out, if you look at the label, you can figure out how many calories are in a can of soda. And then fruit juice is very similar. It's got some nutrients in it, but it's had the fiber stripped out of it. So it's going to be pretty close to the same as pure sugar, because you don't have the fiber to kind of keep the calorie density down. Whereas if you just eat the orange, it's only 300 calories a pound. But if you drink a tall glass of orange juice, it's probably going to be, I don't know if it's going to be quite as high as pure sugar, but it's going to be probably up near 1,000 calories a pound. You just have to multiply the number of, it has calories on it and how many servings, and it's usually 2 servings in most cans of soda or juice or whatever, and then you can figure out how many calories you're eating. That makes sense?
I have a question, Candace. So I would assume that whole brown rice would come under whole grains, but where would white rice, where would that fall in?
It'd be similar in calories, but it would, because by weight, but because it had the fiber removed, it would, be less filling, so to speak. So, so white rice would be better than eating, bacon or sausage or sweet and sour pork or something like that. But yeah, you'd be better off with something with more fiber, the brown rice. But yeah, white rice isn't the worst thing in the world.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so let's show some examples here.
Foods equal calories. All you got to do is see which one is more filling. Okay, so we got 2 little soy chicken nuggets, and we got 1 1/4 cups of vegetable lentil soup. Don't say anything yet. There are people still thinking on this one, okay? We'll give them a few minutes. Everybody think they got an answer?
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you think? The soup. Now, if you went to medical school or dietetic school or you studied biochemistry and physiology, they would tell you all different things about what fills you up. You might hear about chemicals and hormones and enzymes like CCK and ghrelin, and leptin. You might hear fat is more filling and all these other things, right? Just forget about it. Just pretend you just walked in off the street, which I think many of you did. You just walked in off the street. You don't know anything about biochemistry, chemistry, food, or anything. Just take a wild guess. What do you think it is about the vegetable lentil soup that will fill you up more than the soy chicken nuggets? Anybody? Volume. Man, there's just more of it. And it turns out that's right. They actually did these studies where they fed people equal calories of food to see which was the most filling. And they did it short-term, long-term, subjective, and objectively. So pretty good studies. And they found out that all foods that fill you up have 3 things in common. And can anybody guess what number 1 was? Reading my props, huh? Number 1 was water, and that kind of makes sense, because what does water take up a lot of? Space. And filling up the space in the stomach actually contributes to satiety. Because as you'll learn more about this weekend, on the outside of the stomach, you have these little nerves called stretch receptors. And when you fill the stomach up, they stretch a little, they send signals to the brain, which help release all those chemicals telling you you're, right? Don't you all like to get that feeling of full? So water is very important. Water helps, gives you that, and water also has a lot of weight, which helps give that stretch. Because some things have lots of volume, but they don't have a lot of weight, right? Like air. So water was very important. Anybody want to guess what number 2 was? That's right. Fiber. Now, fiber doesn't make sense when you think about it like water does, because fiber doesn't take up a lot of space, it doesn't have a lot of volume. But do you know what you get when you mix a lot of water and a lot of fiber together? You know what you get? You get a lot of, did you say gas? That's true. You get a lot of gas in the beginning. But you get something called bulk, right? And it turned out that bulk was the biggest contributor to your feeling full. Now, nutrients did play a role. You do have these nutrient receptors, and nutrients were important, but it turns out they're not the most important. So when they tell you to eat a diet high in protein or high in fat because that'll fill you up the most, it's not true. I could take 2 foods with the exact same amount of protein in them, and guess which one will fill you up more? The one that has the most bulk. Right. Think about that. So it's not just the protein or the fat, and I'm going to show you here in a minute.
Okay, let's go to the next one and give more examples.
Okay, you ready? Okay, we have a cup of cashews, and we have 6 small baked potatoes. Do not say anything yet. So, with salsa. That's correct. Somebody, yeah, with salsa. We'll leave it at that. Okay, which one do you think will fill you up more? The potatoes. Why? What do the potatoes have more of that the cashews do? Bulk. Now, are these high in fat? Yeah, they're 75% fat. Is this low in fat? It's 1% fat. So is fat filling? No, not at all. Now, does this make cashews fattening? No, not necessarily. What if you ate just 1 or 2 cashews? That's not right. You're right. We know nobody does that. Okay, now I'm going to do some other comparisons. You ready? So this one was pretty easy. Enough said over there, right? Okay, look at this one. Oh, we did this one already, but I want to make another point. Is this high in fat? 70, 80%. Is this low in fat? Under 10. So is fat what filled you up? What filled you up? The bulk. Everybody got that? Here we go. 2 low-fat fig Newmans, not to mention anybody in particular, and 1 small cantaloupe. They're both 140 calories. You see the difference? Which would fill you up more? The cantaloupe. Now let me ask you a question. In 1980, you heard you should go on a low-fat diet, right? So you go to the supermarket or the whole food store and you find all these low-fat foods and you fill up on those. Do you see the problem? If you eat all you want, what happened to your caloric intake? It's too high. But what if you eat just the right amount of calories? Then what's happened? Now you're hungry all day long. Is that going to happen with these foods? Now, just for the record, do you know that the percentage of fat, carb, and protein is almost identical? They almost have the same ratio. So is it the ratio or the amount of protein, the carb, or the fat that fills you up? Because those two are pretty equal. What fills you up more? Bulk. It's simple. Look at this one. Here's a... On the left, we have a 2-pound fresh pineapple. On the right, we have 4 ounces of gummy bears. Both are 450 calories. Now, I put this one up there because everybody's anti-sugar these days, right? You can't have sugar. Sugar's no good. You can't have carbs. And I think that's crazy because, you know, sugar's good for you. I mean, does everybody know what the best fuel for your body is? Gummy bears. Make a note of that. I got to fix the slide, okay? Gummy bears. Right. What's the fuel that your body runs on, the preferred fuel? What do you... Glucose. That's a fancy name for sugar. Now, your body will also burn another fuel. Anybody know what it is? Fat. Whoever said it is correct. The 2 fuels your body likes to burn, number 1 is sugar, number 2 is fat. Now, every now and then you hear somebody say, I need some energy. I got to get some protein. Right? You ever hear that? Well, just realize when somebody tells you that, they just told you they know nothing about physiology and biochemistry, because that's not what your body wants to use for energy. And in fact, it's a difficult process. Your body uses carbs first, and secondary is fat. So, you know, when you work out, some of you get an exercise, your muscles burn up some carb, and they also burn up some fat. And some of us are looking to burn up a little bit more fat, right? But there's parts of your body that can't burn fat. Parts of your body can only burn sugar, glucose. And anybody know what part of your body it is? The brain. That's why I don't get it when people are so anti-sugar and they want to avoid sugar. I mean, I don't know about them, but my brain, very important to me. And it needs sugar every day. And they've actually done studies. I mean, there's recommended minimum intakes of sugar just to fuel the brain. Anybody know how much that is, the recommended minimum intake of sugar you need just to fuel the average brain? 500 calories a day just to fuel the average brain. Now, I had mine tested. Mine burns about 750 a day. But oh, I'm smart. You're very nice. Because the last time I was here, somebody raised their hand and said, why? Is yours less efficient? Why is that funny? I said, don't make fun of me. I have the props. Okay, so is sugar the problem, or is the package the problem? I mean, these both have the same amount of calories and the same amount of sugar. Are they equal to you? No. What's 90% of the weight and volume of the pineapple you're going to eat there? Water, fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and a great package and great matrix, just right for you. What's 90% of the weight and the volume of this? Sugar. So is sugar the problem or the package it came in? It's the package. Don't be afraid of sugar. Once again, get it in its whole natural form. Now, what I think is the real irony is they take foods like this, they process and refine the heck out of them, so we're left with this white crystalline powder, which is sweet, but it doesn't really have a flavor. It's just sweet. So then they make it into things like this, but to get kids to eat it, what do they flavor it as? this. Does anybody see that irony? Just give them the pineapple. So then we have people who have been loading up on these for 20 years. They got heavy. And then what do they say? I can't eat pineapple. It has sugar in it. So, okay, here's a few more I just want to show you so you can get the point. Every one of them will be 200 calories. That's a pat of butter, in case you forgot what it looked like. And those are grapes, 200 calories. Which would be better for you? Which would be more filling? Which would have more fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and everything? Okay, here we have a little bit of almonds. Here we have carrots. Same 200 calories. See the difference? So you see the problem if we put bowls of almonds out in the back? It's we would have this room packed. It's not that almonds are bad for you, but what would happen to all of you? We would overeat. And it's not your fault. So, here we go again. French fries and honeydew melon. See the difference? Which would be better for you? The one on the right. Right. That's olive oil and sliced apples. Same calories. Which would fill you up more? Which would be healthier? Right. There's broccoli and pretzels. Are you drooling over the broccoli now or the pretzels? This was the red meat guy, so I'm trying to figure it out. See the difference? Now, I'm not saying you should only eat raw broccoli. I'm just making a point. And is everybody getting the point? Okay, good, because now it gets harder. Hershey Kisses and those little red peppers we occasionally have out in the back. See why we put the peppers out? No. Okay, potato chips and celery. Every now and then somebody says, you know, I'm really enjoying this diet, but I would like something crunchy. And I'm like, eat crisp celery, it's very crunchy. And they say, no, I want something that's crunchy and kind of has like a salty flavor. So I said, eat crisp celery. It's crunchy and kind of has a salty flavor. And they say, no, that's not quite what I want. And I say, just admit it. You want potato chips. Okay. Okay, you ready? Okay, we have a cup of cashews.
Okay, that was that. All right, questions about those videos before I go over this slide? Okay, we'll have lots of time for questions. This is like the results of the calorie density studies that those feeding experiments did over those years at through Penn State University. And so I call them the calorie density breakout. So if you're eating foods that are only 400 calories per pound or less, everyone in those feeding studies all lost weight even without any exercise, completely sedentary. So 400 calories a pound is the magic number there. People that were eating between 400 and 800 calories per pound lost weight as long as they exercised 30 to 60 minutes per day. So that's kind of the next little segment up. And so we can go back over the chart if you're want to refresh your memory onto what foods are 400 calories a pound or less, which ones are in that 400 to 800 calorie zone, and then going higher. So 800 to 1200 calories per pound, people that ate in that zone all gained weight except for the heavy exercisers. So people that exceeded the 60 minutes per day were really heavy exercisers, but everyone else, so everyone gained weight except for them. And then at the 1200 calories per pound and up, everybody gained weight, even the heavy exercisers. So it kind of just goes to show the standard American diet is 1200 calories a pound and up. And so it's even heavy exercisers tend to gain weight if they're eating that high in calorie density. So you can come back to this. You can take a screenshot of it. This class will be recorded if you want to get those breakouts there. But let me go back to the chart just to kind of give you a refresher. So essentially everything that's 400 calories a pound or less would be potatoes, sweet potatoes, fruits, and vegetables would be it. And then whole grains are just barely above. But if you think about, averaging, you're not going to be just eating non-starchy vegetables all day long, because that would be not enough calories. So if you think about it, these are kind of, it's like you're averaging this. So if you're eating kind of the plate we talk about, where you're eating like half your plate is, non-starchy vegetables, or a quarter of your plate is starchy vegetables, or the other way around, maybe half your plate starchy vegetables, a quarter of the plate is non-starchy vegetables, and then you do sprinkle in some nuts and seeds, and maybe you do occasionally have a tortilla or a little bit of bread. You can see how, depending on how much of some of those foods that are over here you eat, you can still average out, close to 400 to 500 calories a pound. It just depends on what balance of these foods you have. So kind of, whenever you're eating non-starchy vegetables, you're way below that 400. So you can afford to eat, your whole grains and your beans and legumes, and maybe even a little bit of pasta, stuff like that. So, or if you're still not going to be completely vegan, and you want to still have a little bit of animal products, these aren't super high, only about 700 calories a pound, chickens, eggs, and fish, for example. So we're just talking about weight loss here, not these studies weren't pushing any agenda of plant-based or anything like that. It was just feeding experiments of different foods and how it affected people's weight and what their activity levels and things. So, yeah, you're pretty much just trying to live down here, unprocessed foods, mostly whole plant foods. And we're talking about weight, and then, kind of minimizing some of these yellow light foods, tortillas, bread. The oil is the biggest piece of this that can throw your calorie density off. And then all your processed foods, dried goods, processed foods, and stuff like that. So just kind of wanted to give you a refresher on that. And then, then again, I recommend watching that full Jeff Novick lecture. When I do the class on nutritional myths and other popular diets, I talk a little bit about carbohydrates, for example, and he has a little section. I show a little clip of that lecture where he talks about carbohydrates. And so it's a really, really good lecture. I highly encourage you to watch that there on the website. And then again, watch it every 3 months until you've reached your goal weight. And that's it there. So now the rest of the time we have is for questions. Guys, feel like you have a good understanding of what calorie density is, and see how powerful and how empowering it can be. It can really set you free, because no more do you have to count the calories and not having to portion control and weigh your food and all this kind of stuff. Just, you just kind of sit down planning your meal. What's the calorie density of the different foods that I'm eating? And as long as they're, mostly 500 calories a pound or less or so, for the vast majority, you're probably going to be right in that sweet spot and help you lose weight and feel full at the same time. Anything you want to add as well, Charlie?
I'm just waiting for someone to come up with a question. No, I think you covered the calorie density quite well. I am kind of curious as to how many of you think that you're eating over 3 pounds of food a day versus those who are eating less than 3 pounds a day. Just give it a little thought. And see whether you say, is that really enough? Or does it seem too much?
It's not that you have to weigh it yourself to find out how much you eat. It's just, you just eat till you're full and satisfied. And that's what they did in those feeding experiments. It's just that they did weigh the food long-term over those feeding experiments. And that's about what people tended to eat. And each individual person tended to eat about the same amount from day to day to day. So that's why it shows how we're going to eat till we're full and satisfied. Let's make sure those however many pounds of food we do eat to make us full and satisfied, or we want to make them count, the highest in nutrients and going to bring us the best health.
I'll run.
Good evening. Good evening. I have a question. I agree with what's being said, but I wonder if we could add in another factor of aging. Do you think older people like us have less need for so many calories? Like, for example, I've been noticing myself that I don't feel as hungry as I used to 5-10 years ago. And so I just thought I'll get your answers on that.
Yeah, people do tend to eat less as they get older because lose some muscle mass, and unless you're exercising really heavily and getting resistance exercise to maintain your muscle mass, most people do lose muscle mass, and then they tend to not require as many calories, so they don't have as big of an appetite. Which then it's even more important to actually choose the healthiest foods so that you can make them count. But it depends. Also, it depends if that person, even if they're elderly, whether they're overweight or not. So if they're thin and trying to maintain weight, then they have to increase their calorie density to maintain their weight. Whereas somebody that actually does need to lose some weight, some body fat, then they can try to lower that calorie density, but try to choose foods that are low in calorie density but still really high in nutrients so that they get everything they need.
Remember the exercise issue also. As we get older, sometimes the amount we're exercising slows down a bit, and we lose muscle mass because of that aspect. So perhaps some of the decrease in the calories is related to that. So if you maintain exercise on a daily basis and you're doing a healthy amount for your body, you may find that you're eating pretty much the same for many, many years.
And interventional trials have shown that people that are losing muscle mass and trying to gain muscle mass, just increasing protein intake does not add body muscle, does not add muscle to the body. Only the exercise and resistance exercise was successful at that. So getting adequate calories and exercise, but just adding more protein to the diet does not show to increase muscle mass.
So if you are doing just, let's say, 10,000 steps a day, that's not enough, or that's adequate? Or do you think you need to have actual, like the resistance exercises included in it to increase your muscle mass?
Yeah, so you want to be incorporating weight-bearing exercise or resistance exercises. The resistance exercises are going to build your muscle mass. The walking activities, maybe biking, swimming, are going to maintain your fitness level, the way you utilize oxygen and how your body runs. But in order to maintain muscle mass, it's suggested by most of the organizations that 2 to 3 times a week, you do some resistance exercises. And that could be weights, it could be stretch bands. I can't think of what else, Scott. I don't know what else you would do to build muscle.
Yeah, even gardening and lifting things, and so anything you're contracting your muscles to do, weight bearing like that.
Okay.
I've been trying.
I'm sorry.
I've been trying wall Pilates, and for an older person who's overweight, it's difficult for me to get up and down on the ground, and those, because you're using the resistance of your own body, and that seems to be helping a little bit.
So it would be good for you to do that on a regular basis and keep increasing the number of repetitions you do. Not a lot, but maybe a couple more each few days. And you will potentially start building muscle. And once you get down to an ideal body weight, you may be able to do a bit more of those resistance exercises with stretch bands or with free weights. But right now, do what you're able to do. I'll run.
Thank you. I was saying that, yes, when I go to the Y, I have tried to push that, there's a 4-wheeler that you push.
Yeah.
And that seems to really help. Even just going once back and forth, that seems to bring some sweat and power, So
Yeah.
I've been doing that lately. Yeah.
It might be helpful to see if they have a coach, a health coach or a class, which could kind of guide you into what is appropriate weights, what are appropriate exercises for your particular life, and what works for you. Just like coaching over diet, coaching over exercise could be a helpful thing at the Y.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, let us know if there's anybody like that. I don't know yet. I'm sure there must be.
Most fitness gyms have personal trainers that you can hire, but it just costs money.
Yeah. But it might be worth 1 or 2 sessions to spend
Yeah.
a little money to get your maximum benefit if you're concerned about muscle loss.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Who else has a question? I hope you were listening closely to Scott, because particularly the message about the standard American diet, how many calories per pound you're getting compared to a whole food plant-based diet. The numbers, I hope, have been burned in your brain. One of the numbers should be, and it could be a range like this: 500 to 600 calories a pound, which is going to really fill you up every time you eat that much in the way of whole plant foods. And you may be able to get in 3 meals a day, which could give you a maximum of 12 to or 1,500 1,800 calories a day, which is probably going to allow you to lose weight down to your ideal, versus the standard American diet, which is going to give you a 1,200 to 1,500 calorie range. I think Scott said 1,500, and then I also heard 1,200. So there's some range in there. It doesn't really matter exactly, but it's actually about 1,000 calories a pound more. So you're going to be having a very difficult time losing weight if you continue to eat the standard American foods that you're used to eating. No matter how much you love them, if you want to lose weight, you might want to focus your attention on changing your taste buds, which will happen over a few weeks generally with whole plant foods. And they're tasty, actually. Any thoughts from anyone? I didn't mean to make the room completely quiet.
And if no one has more questions, I can show the beginning of that Jeff Novick video just to kind of whet your appetite some more. We can always do that if you guys don't have more questions, but leave it up to you.
I'd like to see the video some more.
Want me to show some more of the video?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
Why don't you do that, Scott?
Yeah. Go back to the website. Go to videos. Scroll down. Here we go.
What we're going to talk about today is calorie density. And I know this sounds almost like an infomercial, how to eat more, weigh less, and live longer. But right. Call now. Operators are standing by. But as you're going to see, this is really fascinating. And I'm going to explain to you what you're doing here and why it works so well, and give you some of the science and numbers behind it. Before I do, though, I want to show you a picture. We're going to start with a picture and end with a picture. Remember yesterday I was saying how times have changed in the last 30 years? This is a movie theater in 1955. Do you notice anything different? There's no food. And everybody is thin. In fact, look here. They're sitting 2 in a seat. When I grew up, I used to go to movies and sit in the same seat as my brother. I'm not sure why we did those things, but apparently people did that. Now they have to make movie seats bigger. Not only is there no food, there's no way to put the food. There's no cup holders. I got a movie theater near me called Premiere, and they have reclining love seats with trays and a bar. They have a full-service restaurant and a bar. Oh yeah, in the movie theater. So have times changed? Unbelievable. So that's what I was showing you last night. What we're going to do is I'm going to introduce and go over a few concepts. One, we're going to mention carbohydrates. I mentioned it last night. We're going to talk about calorie density. We're going to talk about something called satiety. And we're going to talk about a little bit about living long. And then I'm going to put it all together for you. And I even got props. Okay? So I mentioned this yesterday. Let's just briefly touch on carbohydrates because, you know, people are so confused. You could come here 2-3 times, listen to these talks, you walk out and you go, yeah, but should I really eat carbs? Right? Right. Well, why should you eat them? I mentioned it last night. High carbohydrate foods, if they're the right carbs, are the richest sources of vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, microminerals, trace minerals, and energy. They're the best fuel for your body. This is why you want to eat them. Now, if you cut out foods that are high in carbs, you can lose weight because you'll cut out calories, but you're also going to mortgage your long-term health for short-term weight loss because you're going to cut out the most nutrient-rich foods. So you don't want to do it. Now, the problem is nobody really knows how to tell a good carb from a bad carb. You know, we know there's a difference. There's good fats and bad fats. There's good carbs and bad carbs. And you hear things like glycemic index, right? And you hear things like complex and simple, right? Have you all heard that? To me, those are all way too complex. I've made it simpler. If you want to know the difference between the carbs you should eat and the carbs you might want to avoid, is this test. The carbs you should eat are unrefined, and the ones you should avoid are the refined. And unrefined carbs are very simple. You could eat them the way they grow in the garden. Make sense? So this potato, grow in the garden? Can you eat it this way except for the fact you might cook it or peel it? So it's good for you? Okay, but what if I cut it up into sticks, put it in the deep fryer for a little bit, and... No, what did I change about it? I refined or processed it in some way, and the more I do it, the worse it gets. So this is really the simplest way. Can I eat it the way it grew in the garden except for the fact that I might want to cook it or peel it? Very simple. You don't have to be a biochemist to get this. So, now the problem was in 1980 when they looked around the world and they looked at all the long-lived populations, they ate diets that were very high in carbs. I'm going to show you the numbers. Some were 80, 85% carbohydrates. And that's why they recommended we eat more carbs and less fat. And what they meant was that we should eat carbs like this: brown rice, oatmeal, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, starchy vegetables, leafy greens, even potatoes. These were the foods they were hoping we would eat. They're very low in calories, very low in calorie density. They're packed with water, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. All the fresh fruits, veggies, starchy vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. But is this what Americans ate since 1980? No. This is what they ate. All these that are packed with calories, packed in calorie density, stripped of the nutrients. All the cakes, cookies, crackers, pretzels, chips, and all the rest. So what you're looking at makes up 90% of the carbohydrate intake in the United States. 90% of the carbs we eat are white flour, white sugar, white rice, white pasta. The average adult American eats 0.9 servings of whole grains a day. That's it, 0.9. So we got heavy on these, and what did we blame? Corn, grapes, right? People are afraid to eat these foods, yet they didn't cause the problem. Now, when we refine a food, 3 things happen, and I put them here because we're going to come back to it in a minute. The first thing that happens is you take out the water, all right? It's one of the ways you dry fruit or you, right? Second is you take out or you reduce the amount of fiber, and the third is you reduce or eliminate nutrients. The more refining and processing you do, the more this happens. So these are going to be important in a few minutes, so realize this is what refining does. Now, here's an example. What I'm showing you is 200 calories of corn. On the left is cornmeal. I know it looks like a sunny side up egg, but especially by now. But it's a cornmeal. On the right is 200 calories of corn. Now, which one do you think is better for you? The one on the right. Which do you think tastes better? The one on the right. Which do you think has more fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and everything else good for you? The one on the right. And this tastes great. How many of you love corn? We all do. Right. How many of you have ever like sat down in front of the TV with a bag of cornmeal and a spoon? Some of you were reluctant, but I thought you were going to raise your hand. Okay, so then if I make this into this in order to get you to eat it, what do I got to do to it? I got to probably add a little oil, maybe a little salt, maybe a little sugar, make it into something. Definitely put some salt and sugar in it so you'll eat it. So for 25 years, Americans have been getting fat on this, right? And then you ask them how they got heavy, and what do they blame? Corn. Wasn't the corn. So that's carbohydrates. You got the difference? Real simple. You don't have to be a biochemist. Just understand the closer it is to the way it was grown in nature, the better for you. Okay, now let's talk about calorie density. Does everybody in here know what calorie density is and what that term refers to? Okay. I'm going to remind you. Okay, what is calorie density? Very simply, it's the number of calories in a given weight of food. And generally in the world, what we talk about is calories per pound. If you read the research, they do calories per gram. But in the world, we'll do pounds. Because how many of you know what grams of food look like? Nobody. But when you go shopping, do you buy food by the pound? So we're going to talk about it by pound. Now, if we go into a grocery store and we took all the food and lined it up by calorie density and we found the food that was the lowest and the food that was the highest, there would be a 40-fold difference. So so if we have a pound of food, the amount of calories packed in it can vary tremendously. Now, a lot of people are looking for a simple way to know if a food is fattening, right? Is that fattening? Is this fattening? Should I eat that? Well, calorie density won't tell you that. But what calorie density will tell you is how easy it is to overeat on a food if you know the calorie density. Doesn't make it fattening necessarily, but you know how easy it is to overeat. Let me show you a chart. What we're going to see on the left is the amount of calories in a pound. What we're looking down here is just some sample foods. Now, all numbers are going to be edible portion. So, you know, ready to eat. Got rid of the peel, the rind, or whatever. So if I had a pound of broccoli, I got 128 calories, which is very low. If I had a pound of fresh oranges, I got 211. If I had a pound of oatmeal, I got 325. If I got a pound of baked potatoes, I got 495. Red beans, 550. Whole wheat bread, even whole wheat bread. Anybody know how many calories in a pound of whole wheat bread? Right. 1,120. How about a pound of Oreos? I will worry if any of you get this right. 2,200 virtually. And what about almonds, nuts and seeds? Anybody know how many calories in a pound of nuts and seeds? Almost 3,000. 2,600. Some run up to 28 and 3,000. How about oil and pure fat? 4,000 calories per pound. So as you can see, between the lowest and the highest, there's a virtually 40-fold difference. Everybody see it? And some vegetables are actually lower than 100. So there's an over 40-fold difference. Now, I don't know about you, but the very first time I saw this chart a while ago, you know what I said to myself? Who cares? No, really, I'm being honest. I said, who cares? Because I've never eaten a pound of olive oil. I've never eaten a pound of Oreos. I don't think I've ever eaten a pound of bread. I know I haven't eaten a pound of broccoli, so who cares? Right? Any of you thinking that? Okay, so I'm the only one. Let me show you why it matters. Let's say I have a specific food. These are carrots. All right, this is a, couple cups. And here I have a bowl of carrots. It's smaller. This is more like a cup. Now, when I compare these, is the amount of calories between the two bowls different? That was not a trick question. Are the amount of calories different? Yes. And the point of this is anytime I have a food and I change the serving size, what happens to the calories? It changes. It goes up or down depending on the serving size. So if I want to know calories, I also have to know the calories for every serving size I might ever eat of food, correct? Correct. But if I change the serving size, does the calorie density change? No. The calorie density does not change. It stays the same. Calorie density is what we call a constant. And in math, when you're doing equations, it's good to have a constant. So calorie density is a constant. So I may never eat a pound of olive oil, and I may never eat a pound of broccoli. But no matter how much broccoli I have and how much olive oil I have, will the olive oil always be 40 times more concentrated? That's the point of it. And I mean, just to put this in perspective for you, you might not eat a pound of olive oil, but has anybody in here ever eaten a tablespoon of olive oil? That tablespoon of olive oil have more calories packed into it than a full pound of broccoli. Virtually. See the difference? So it doesn't matter whether you eat a pound or not. It's a constant that gives you perspective. Now, let's think for a minute. Which side of the chart do you think the foods are easier to overeat on? The left side or the right side? The right side. We don't get a lot of broccoli bingers coming through here. In fact, I think they died out in the like the Neanderthal time. They were sitting eating their broccoli and a dinosaur got them. So, right. How hard is it to overeat on broccoli? It's impossible. What'd you say? Pretty tough. How hard is it to overeat on Oreos and almonds? Right. Now this doesn't make, okay, is it easy to overeat on almonds? Yes. But does that make almonds fattening? No. No, no. What if you only had 1 or 2 almonds? Would that be fattening? No. But I've never known any human being to eat 1 or 2 almonds. So are you more likely to overeat on the almonds than on the broccoli? See the issue? See why this is important? So calorie density is giving you a number, and since 1980 there's just been probably 100 studies on this. 50 or so came out of Penn State alone with Barbara Rolls. It's fascinating what you will see what happens with this info. In fact, here's one of the studies. She followed people over a few days to watch the amount of food they ate. She didn't tell them anything. She just watched them. And it turned out that regardless of what you ate, the amount of the weight of the foods you ate was pretty similar. So the weight of the food, this is food taken grams, was pretty similar over a few days. People eat a certain amount of food each day. But depending on whether it was high in calorie density, ED means energy density or calorie density, whether it was low or high, look what happened to the caloric intake. Because we ate a similar amount of weight of food, so if we change the calorie density, what happens to the calories we take in? It changes. See how important this is? So you still get to eat all you want, but if you change the calorie density, what happens to your caloric intake? It could go up or down depending which way you go. So let us review. You know, I stay up all night thinking of these things. So I appreciate a laugh or two occasionally. We're going to cover a lot. I didn't get hugged enough as a kid. That's why I do this. Okay, we're going to cover a lot today. So I just want to review, because I know some of you said, you know, last night that was a lot of information. So I want to make sure we get this. So let us review. What we've learned so far is we want to avoid foods that are calorie rich and processed. So our key point as of this moment is cut the crap.
All right.
Mhm.
So you can watch that anytime you want there on the website. It goes on and on. He's a really good speaker, really entertaining. But yeah, since we had a few minutes left, I want to make sure if anyone else had a couple last questions.
No need to be shy.
It seems tantalizingly easy.
Galaxy. Oh,
Oh, no, that's okay. Rob.
Yeah, it does seem really simple, doesn't it? Just making different choices. But it's just, when you're eating whole food, plant-based for all the reasons we talk about in these classes, it's just kind of that reminder that, oh, that's why you can lose weight on a whole food, plant-based diet because of the calorie density.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Then there's the behavior and emotional issues we'll talk about on the other class with the food addiction behavior change, because there's habits and lots of other things that play into how we feel about food and being full and satisfied, and how we use food. So
Proudy.
Michael Greger in his book, and never, not to die or something like that, he said it all, and if you read that several times, you don't want to eat that stuff.
Yeah, How Not to Die is a really good book for anybody who's just looking for evidence-based information on why eating more whole plant foods is a healthy way to go.
I read it 4 times. It made total sense. Every once in a while I eat out with the friends, and I enjoy the company and the food with it, but it does not make me fat, because when I go home, it's the same thing again, the low plant fare.
Right. Anybody else? Jerry, you're right that the movie They're Trying to Kill Us is very good. And yes, you can find that movie on YouTube. It's They're Trying to Kill Us. You'll find it very interesting and engaging. The first part of the movie seems like it's not talking about food, like it's talking about gun violence and other kinds of issues. But hang in there. After the first 10 minutes or so, you'll get to the food issue, and it's I don't know, an hour and a half or so movie that's worth seeing. Go ahead, Candace. Unmute yourself first.
I just had a question. When I first started eating like this, and I've been doing it for a couple months now, so I'm still kind of a newbie at it, but I had a lot of kind of stomach ache, and I guess it was from the fiber in the bulk, but I would almost feel like I needed to eat something else within an hour that may be more dense and high caloric, like a piece of bread and butter. And now though, I notice that my stomach has adjusted to it, and I do feel full from like eating a full salad. I feel comfortably full without that empty feeling that comes on. Is there something physiological that causes that, or is it just getting used to it? Or
in my experience, most patients that I instruct on this, the biggest mistake people make when they feel not very full and they feel kind of empty and they're hungry again in an hour or two, it's usually because they're eating too low in calorie density. They're not eating enough starchy vegetables. And so a lot of times they're just eating these giant salads and they're not including any starchy vegetables. And so I'm then, and then, yeah, again, reaching for like meat and cheese or bread and butter and things like that. It's like, no, let's make sure you're getting plenty of starchy vegetables. Get those potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, corn, squash, intact whole grains, beans and legumes. So those are all your starchy vegetables, and those are in that 400 to 600 calories a pound. And so you're going to be much more full and satisfied eating those with the addition of the non-starchy vegetables. So it's kind of a starch-based diet with the addition of fruits and vegetables is kind of where you want to go, especially if you're having those problems with not feeling full long enough and you're feeling kind of empty. But and then if you're trying to lose weight, sometimes you can go overdo it a little bit too much. So if someone has a lot of weight to lose and they're eating like 80% starchy vegetables and only 10 to 20% non-starchy vegetables and fruit, they might have a harder time losing weight because their calorie density is up around 600-700 calories a pound, especially if they're adding some nuts and seeds and things. But usually it's, if you just go at least like maximum weight loss is usually about a 50-50 ratio. So 50% starchy vegetables, 50% non-starchy vegetables, fruit for dessert, things like that. That kind of is been shown to be a pretty good sweet spot.
I had a sleeve gastrectomy about 12 years ago. And so I've trained myself. I couldn't eat very much at one setting. I could only eat, if I were eating a lot of bulky food, it would only be like maybe 8 ounces, 10 ounces. I've got it up now to eating a little over a pound and a half of food by adding more starch and legumes in it. And I think that's making the difference because I also was very quick to stop eating. If I felt like I was that bite before the bite that was going to make me overfull, I'd stop. So there's some fear there. So I'm having to work on kind of letting go of some of that fear, being realistic that I do have a smaller stomach, not to stretch it out, but also to make myself eat more at one setting seems to be helping too.
Good. Thanks for sharing.
Good. I have had one or two people through the years who initially may have had some loose stool, almost diarrhea, which lasted for several weeks. I told them to hang in there, and eventually their body adapted and adjusted, and they've done quite well. So there are sometimes some bodily changes for whatever reasons that can be a little disconcerting, and that's why you ask questions and talk one-on-one with one of us as a coach to kind of help guide you through. Trouty?
I've had this happen, and it was the oil and excess sugar that would just come out and clean you out. When it's all out, it will stop that. It will not do that anymore. But it's all that stuff that was normally eaten that has to be cleansed out first, and then it settles down.
All right. Any last questions from someone who hasn't had an opportunity yet, who wants to say anything, add to the discussion, have a question? So next week, Scott, we're doing the second
weight management. Yeah, weight management part 2, whatever, what you have to share.
Okay, so we'll look forward to meeting with you all back here again in a week. And if you have friends or family who are interested in this topic or they have questions, the price is right. Doesn't cost anything. And we try to share the resources so that you can find out for yourself. We appreciate you all coming. It's been fun. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Okay, Beth.
I was a few minutes late, but are you going to be in the future saying what you thought about seeing Dr. Greger?
Okay, so we went to see Dr. Greger, and it was like going to a family reunion where everybody got along for a change. There was no fighting. Everybody was supportive of what was going on. It was really quite a joy. Got to see a number of people from classes from 10 years ago. There were close to 1,000 people, I understand, at the venue, and it was a wonderful event. That's what I would have to say about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, everybody. Thanks again, Scott, and thanks for you all. We'll see you again next week, and the recording will be online.
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. And see some of you on Sunday as well at the YMCA.
Oh, rats.